State Department lays off over 1,300 employees. Around July 11, 2025, the U.S. Department of State began a large wave of layoffs, impacting over 1,300 employees. This move is part of the Trump administration's broader plan to restructure and streamline the federal government. Carried out through the Department of Government Efficiency, also known as DOGE. This decision has sparked significant controversy. Reasons and goals. The layoffs came just days after the U.S. Supreme Court lifted a lower court's order, allowing the administration to cut tens of thousands of federal jobs. The State Department announced that this round affected 1,107 civil service employees and 246 foreign service officers. The administration says its main goal is to streamline a bloated bureaucracy, cut redundant departments, and shift more focus to embassies abroad. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the restructuring was necessary to make the State Department more efficient and better aligned with the president's priorities. The initial plan estimated a 15% reduction of the domestic workforce. Notably, almost all positions in the Bureau of Population, Refugees and Migration's Reception Office, which handles refugee resettlement, were cut. Departments focused on democracy, human rights, and immigration were also heavily affected. Impact and reactions. Affected foreign service officers will receive 120 days of administrative leave. Civil servants will get 60 days before their jobs officially end. Many received notifications via email, causing serious concerns about employee morale. The layoffs were met with strong criticism from current and former diplomats, arguing that these cuts will weaken U.S. influence globally and reduce its ability to respond to threats. Many regret the loss of valuable experience, especially as diplomats are already working long hours to assist Americans during global crises. President Donald Trump and Secretary Rubio defended the cuts, saying they're necessary to make the department leaner. But overall, these layoffs remain highly contentious and are likely to reshape U.S. diplomacy for years to come. The U.S. Department of State, America's face to the world. The United States Department of State, often simply called the State Department, is America's lead foreign affairs agency. Think of it as the country's main diplomatic arm, working to shape U.S. foreign policy and manage its relationships with nearly 200 other nations and international organizations worldwide. It's a key part of the federal government, playing a critical role in how America interacts with the global community. What does the State Department do? At its core, the State Department works to advance U.S. interests and values around the world. Its broad responsibilities include diplomacy and foreign policy. This is their main job. They negotiate treaties, agreements, and lead diplomatic efforts on everything from trade and climate change to human rights and nuclear disarmament. They represent the U.S. government on the international stage. Protecting U.S. citizens abroad. This is a vital service. Through embassies and consulates in almost every country, they help Americans traveling or living overseas. This can involve issuing passports, assisting in emergencies like arrests, medical crises, or natural disasters, and helping Americans vote from abroad. Promoting peace and stability. The department works to prevent and resolve conflicts, combat terrorism, promote democracy, and support economic development in other countries. This often involves providing foreign aid, engaging in multilateral diplomacy, and supporting international peacekeeping efforts. Managing international partnerships. They maintain and strengthen alliances, build new partnerships, and lead U.S. participation in international bodies like the United Nations, NATO, and various trade organizations. Public diplomacy. This involves explaining U.S. foreign policy to people in other countries and building understanding between Americans and other cultures. Who leads it? The head of the State Department is the Secretary of State, who is nominated by the President and confirmed by the Senate. This person is usually the President's chief foreign policy advisor and is often one of the most visible figures on the global stage. They travel extensively, meet with foreign leaders, and represent the U.S. in high-level negotiations. Structure and global reach. The State Department's operations are vast. It's headquartered in Washington, D.C., at the Harry S. Truman Building, From there, it manages a global network of U.S. embassies, consulates, and diplomatic missions in virtually every country with which the U.S. has diplomatic relations. These missions are staffed by dedicated professionals, including foreign service officers, who are America's career diplomats, and civil service employees who provide specialized support in D.C. and abroad. The department is organized into various bureaus and offices, each focusing on specific regions of the world, like African affairs or East Asian and Pacific affairs, or particular global issues, like counterterrorism or economic and business affairs. Challenges and evolution. The State Department constantly adapts to a changing world. It faces challenges like geopolitical shifts, new global threats, cybersecurity, pandemics, and domestic political shifts that can impact foreign policy priorities. Despite these challenges, its core mission of advancing U.S. interests through diplomacy remains fundamental to America's role in the world. It's the principal way the U.S. engages with other nations, trying to build a more secure, prosperous, and democratic world. Why the U.S. State Department laid off over 1,300 employees. A government perspective. The U.S. Department of State's decision around July 11, 2025, to lay off over 1,300 personnel, including both civil and foreign service officers, was a significant move. From the perspective of the U.S. government and the State Department leadership under the Trump administration, these widespread cuts were not arbitrary, but a necessary part of a broader, deliberate strategy to transform the federal bureaucracy. The government's rationale: streamlining and efficiency. The primary justification for these layoffs, articulated by the administration and key figures like Secretary of State Marco Rubio, centered on efficiency and streamlining the federal government. The argument was that many federal agencies, including the State Department, had become too large, too bureaucratic, and often inefficient in their operations. The goal was to reduce what was perceived as bloated bureaucracy by cutting redundant positions and merging overlapping functions, such as human resources and finance. The administration believed that by reducing the domestic workforce, the State Department could become more agile and responsive. This aligns with the broader objective of the Department of Government Efficiency to achieve significant cost savings and improve the overall effectiveness of government services. The cuts were presented as a move to make the State Department leaner and more nimble, allowing it to better focus its resources on core diplomatic functions abroad, particularly through its embassies and consulates. Aligning with policy priorities. Beyond just efficiency, the layoffs were also framed as a way to realign the State Department's workforce with the administration's specific foreign policy priorities. Certain departments and programs were deemed to be ideologically driven or less critical to the new policy direction. For instance, the significant cuts to the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration, particularly its Refugee Resettlement Program and Global Programs Office, reflect a clear shift away from certain international aid and humanitarian efforts. Similarly, reductions in departments focusing on democracy promotion and human rights signal a re-evaluation of how these issues fit into the broader U.S. foreign policy agenda. From the administration's viewpoint, these personnel changes were essential to ensure that the State Department's resources and manpower were directed towards initiatives directly supporting the President's vision for American leadership and interests on the global stage. It was about ensuring that the department's structure and staffing reflected the administration's America First approach, emphasizing national sovereignty and a more transactional view of international relations, ending uncertainty and moving forward. While acknowledging the immediate disruption, some officials within the administration also expressed a degree of relief once the Supreme Court's decision allowed the layoffs to proceed. From their perspective, the extended period of uncertainty regarding federal employment had been detrimental to morale. By implementing the planned cuts, the administration aimed to end this limbo and provide clarity, allowing the remaining department to stabilize and move forward with its newly defined structure and priorities. In summary, the U.S. government and State Department leadership viewed these layoffs not as a punitive measure, but as a strategic restructuring aimed at creating a more efficient, focused, and politically aligned foreign policy apparatus for the future. The impact of the State Department layoffs, a troubling outlook. The U.S. State Department's decision to lay off over 1,300 employees around July 11, 2025, has sent shockwaves through the diplomatic community and is expected to have significant, far-reaching consequences for American foreign policy and global standing. While the administration framed these cuts as a move toward efficiency, critics argue they risk undermining the very foundations of U.S. diplomacy. Weakened diplomatic capacity and global influence. Perhaps the most immediate and critical impact is the weakening of America's diplomatic capacity. Losing over 1,300 experienced professionals, including both career diplomats, foreign service officers, and specialized civil servants, means a significant loss of institutional knowledge, expertise in specific regions or issues, and established relationships. This reduction in human capital directly hinders the State Department's ability to negotiate effectively. Fewer experienced negotiators mean less robust representation in complex international talks, from trade deals to arms control. Respond to crises. With fewer personnel, the department's ability to quickly deploy resources and expertise to emerging global crises, assist U.S. citizens abroad, or provide critical analysis could be severely hampered. The recent demands on diplomats during the Israel-Iran conflict highlight this vulnerability. Maintain relationships. Sustaining strong bilateral and multilateral relationships requires consistent engagement, which becomes challenging with a smaller workforce. This could create vacuums that rival powers might fill. Eroding morale and brain drain. The manner of the layoffs, with email notifications and relatively short notice periods, has been widely reported to have severely damaged morale within the State Department. This can lead to a brain drain, where talented individuals fearing future instability or disagreeing with the direction choose to leave the Foreign Service or civil service voluntarily. Such an exodus could further deplete the ranks of experienced professionals and make it harder to attract talent in the future, eroding the long-term strength of U.S. diplomacy. The department relies heavily on its dedicated, nonpartisan career staff to execute policy consistently across administrations. Shifts in policy focus and reduced soft power. The specific targeting of bureaus involved in refugee resettlement, human rights, and democracy promotion indicates a clear shift in policy priorities. While the administration sees this as aligning resources with its agenda, critics view it as a retreat from key aspects of America's soft power, its ability to influence through attraction and persuasion rather than coercion. By reducing efforts in these areas, the U.S. might be perceived as less committed to universal values, potentially weakening its moral authority and global leadership. In essence, these layoffs represent a significant gamble with America's diplomatic infrastructure. While proponents hope for a leaner, more efficient agency, critics fear a future where the U.S. has less capacity to engage effectively with the world, compromising its interests and influence on the global stage. Predicting the future of U.S. diplomacy after State Department layoffs. The U.S. State Department's decision to lay off over 1,300 employees around July 11, 2025, sparked considerable debate, and its long-term effects are a subject of intense speculation. While the administration touted efficiency, many predict significant shifts in American foreign policy and global standing, a less robust diplomatic presence. The most immediate prediction is a diminished capacity for sustained, nuanced diplomacy. A significant reduction in experienced staff means fewer diplomats to cover complex issues, fewer experts in critical regions, and a potential loss of established relationships built over years. This could lead to reduced effectiveness in negotiations. With fewer skilled negotiators, the U.S. might find it harder to secure favorable outcomes in international agreements, whether on trade, security, or climate. Slower crisis response, the ability to quickly and effectively respond to global crises, from humanitarian disasters to political instability, could be hampered by a smaller, less experienced workforce. Less consistent engagement. Maintaining the intricate web of global alliances and partnerships requires continuous diplomatic effort. A smaller State Department might struggle to sustain this, potentially creating diplomatic vacuums that other nations could fill. Impact on morale and talent pipeline. The layoffs are widely predicted to further damage morale within the State Department's career ranks. Such large-scale, abrupt changes often breed uncertainty and distrust. This could lead to brain drain. Highly skilled and experienced professionals may choose to leave the Foreign Service or civil service, seeking more stable or ideologically aligned careers elsewhere. This loss of institutional memory and expertise would be difficult to replace. Difficulty attracting top talent. The perceived instability and devaluing of diplomatic careers could deter future generations of bright, diverse candidates from joining the State Department, weakening the talent pipeline for years to come. Shifting foreign policy priorities and soft power erosion. The targeted nature of some cuts, particularly in areas like refugee affairs, human rights, and democracy promotion, suggests a recalibration of U.S. foreign policy priorities. Experts predict this could lead to a more transactional foreign policy. With less emphasis on traditional soft power tools, U.S. engagement might become more focused on immediate national interests and less on promoting global values or long-term institutional building. Reduced global leadership in certain areas. If the U.S. scales back its efforts in areas like human rights or humanitarian aid, other nations or non-state actors may step in, or a vacuum could emerge, potentially impacting global norms and stability. In essence, while the administration envisions a more efficient diplomatic machine, many observers predict a future where the U.S. may have a more limited global footprint, a less robust diplomatic workforce, and potentially a different voice on key international issues.